Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel. Time for the next part of that last vinyl update. Some more hard rock and metal. First, I got to start off with a huge thanks to Scott Waters. I mentioned he was here a couple weeks ago. He came down for a wedding. The first night he was here, he and his wife stayed with us. And then the next day, Scott and I spent the day, about half the day digging. I had to work that day, but hit up a bunch of record stores, just got to chill out and just hang. But he brought a couple of records for me, and then I think I showed one of the CDs already. And he brought me some other stuff as well. I'm not gonna... there we go. So he also brought me, and I'll show the singles that he brought me, and it brought me in another video, but Gary Morris, Blues Alive, which I haven't heard this one. This was later. This was 93. Did he get... No, I think I bought this one. Yeah. And then I'll show the singles in another video. I showed the Primal in the last. But he also brought me a couple of albums. First up, Tony McAlpine, Edge of Insanity. Most people probably know him from Operation Driver. It was him, Bob Rock. Oh my God. It was a Billy Sheehan. And... I know it's another big name. I know it was Billy Sheehan, Rob Rock on vocals, Rob Rock on vocals, Tony on guitar. Who was the drummer? It starts with an R. Anyway, fantastic. If you're into neoclassical shredders at all, really killer. And he wasn't kind of over the top douchey like some of the other shredders. And then this, man, I've been playing this thing nonstop. I love this album. This is New Wave of British Heavy Metal. It's called, the band is 100% Proof. I'm now on the lookout for their second album. Dude, this thing kills. Just first tier New Wave of British Heavy Metal. Highly, highly, highly recommend checking that one out. Next up, just some, let's see, some of this is, I'll talk about a couple of new ones that I just picked up. I saw they were getting reissued, and I didn't have originals of these two, so I went ahead and ordered the, I don't know how the originals sound. These are good, not great, but a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal stuff didn't sound great to start with. So, but we've got Survivors. And then what was this one called? Head On, from Samson. So these are both, Bruce Dickinson is the guitar. He plays guitar and harmonica on this one. But I believe Paul Samson does vocals on most of this album. He's in there a little bit, but I think the lead vocals is still Samson on this one. And then on this one, which is next level, you actually get Bruce Dickinson doing vocals on the whole album, and just takes it to another level. Really killer. I like both of them. The first one with Samson on vocals is more of the 70s sound, and then with the second one you get more of the new wave of British heavy metal sound. Next up, this is one that I wanted for the longest time without even realizing what it was. So I don't know why I always thought this was a military, like a U.S. What did they call it in Armed Forces Network, because it says Allied Forces Radio Special, and it never dawned on me that the name of the album was Allied Forces. You know, for some reason I always thought this was a military promo, because there are some AFN and AFRTS military promos out there. So I finally found a copy. I mean, these I see these for all kind of crazy prices. I got it for like 25 bucks, which is a really good price. The vinyl's mint. But basically what it is I thought it was Allied Forces, and then the second disc was, or the second LP was the radio special. But then I started looking at the songs, and the songs are off their first few albums. So it's a compilation on side A and B. And then side C and D is the radio special. And it's really cool because you get the guys talking about the songs in between. And then, so one guy will talk a little bit, Rick Emmett will talk, or Gilmore or Mike Levine, they'll talk a little bit, then they'll play the song, and they do that through side C and D. So you got 4 or 5 more tracks from Allied Forces on here, as well as some pretty good commentary on the album itself. So still really happy to find this. It's just funny that it was not what I thought it was at all. Next up, this one shocked me. So I was in a local store. I had never heard of this band before. But when I saw this cover, and I'll show it to you, the name of the band is Mad Butcher, and it's Metal Meat. And I thought this was a Total Destruction ripoff. I thought it was going to be wannabe Destruction thrash. And boy, was I wrong. The opposite is actually true. So apparently Mad Butcher was one of the first Teutonic metal bands. So this was from, when was this originally? It doesn't say. Regardless, this actually came out the same year as the Mad Butcher EP, whatever year that was. So apparently Mad Butcher was the big band in Germany at the time, going back to like 81, and they were the band that all the other German bands looked up to. And so when Destruction did the Mad Butcher EP, they were really kind of paying homage to this band as opposed to vice versa. And then this cover looks kind of similar to the cover from Destruction, and I believe it's coincidence. You know, I mean, Mad Butcher, you know, they've always, you know, I think on the Mad Butcher cover from Destruction, they have the big butcher's knife. Well, they've been using a butcher knife on their album covers and stuff for years before this. So I think this might be their second or third album. This is fantastic, just straight up metal though. I really, really dig this. It's not thrash. It's just really killer German metal, and it's fantastic. I highly recommend grabbing this. Originals are hundreds of bucks. This was done by Dying Victims Productions. And I paid like 18 bucks for it, and 100% worth grabbing that one. That's just one of those bands that we really should know about. Next up, so I was doing a live stream with Patrick and myself. Who was it? Was Vance there? I can't remember. I believe Vance was there as well. But we were doing a top 5 Thin Lizzy. Having a top 5, or listing our top 5 Thin Lizzy songs. And, you know, we just got to discussing, and I brought up the fact that Brian Robertson just gets no credit for how important he was to the Thin Lizzy sound. I think he was the longest running guitar player that they had. And a lot of the best solos, everybody talks about Snowy. Everybody talks about Gary Moore. Everybody talks about Scott Gorham. They always talk, well, actually Scott Gorham was the longest guitar player in the band, but next to Scott, it was Brian. But he gave so much to the sound of that band, and gets no credit. I mean, everybody knows who Snowy is. Everybody knows who Gary is. Nobody ever talks about him. So then John brought up, hey, have you checked out the Wild Horses albums? And I hadn't. I didn't even know they existed. So when Scott and I, and actually, I'll just talk about it. There's a couple more in here that I got while I was digging with Scott. Well, me and Scott were digging at one of the local stores, Mojo Records here. And I was flipping through, and I've probably passed this 100 times, but didn't know who it was. And saw the Wild Horses and had to grab it. This album is fantastic. This is the second album from Wild Horses. I like this one so much that night I went on Discogs and found a promo copy of the first album. So this is the first album with Wild Horses. It's got Jimmy Bain, and it's him and Jimmy Bain do all the writing on this. I don't like the debut as much. The debut, you can tell he's still got that Thin Lizzy sound in his head. And this all sounds like Thin Lizzy for the most part. It's not bad. It just sounds like they're trying to be Thin Lizzy. But then on this second album, they really kind of find their sound. And with the exception of one song that I didn't like on here, this album is fantastic. So highly, highly recommend checking that one out. If you like Thin Lizzy, you're not going to go wrong. Next up, a couple more and I found that first when I was digging with Scott. These next 3 or 4 were also, well, a couple were digging with him. So this one was digging with him as well. Jump the Gun from Pretty Maids. It was called Lethal Heroes here in the U.S. I had never seen a vinyl pressing of this one. I've had it on CD for probably a dozen years or so. Under the Lethal Heroes name, and was super stoked to find it for a really good price and pretty much mint condition. I believe this one is a UK pressing, but really happy to have that one. And then these next few, so there was a record store in the small town. He was saying in a small town called Ball Ground while he was in town for a wedding. So he spent the first couple days hanging out with me, and then the next 3 days were with his family for the wedding, you know. And we went out on a Thursday digging, and he told me that there was a really cool looking record store there in Ball Ground. And I had never heard of it, never been there. Unfortunately, it was closed that day that we were digging. So he went there one of the other days. He was hanging out with his family and said it was pretty cool. So I went out there a couple days after or maybe it was the last day he was here. So we didn't meet up that day, but I ended up going to that record store and found a couple cool things. The first one, this one, kind of New York street metal, I guess you would call it. It's a band called Character. Couldn't find a whole lot of information about them other than they're a New York band. Couple really good songs on here. I guess they got signed off of this and put out an album called Demon Child. Demon Child is actually the worst song on here. It's the only song I don't like on this EP. Into the Fire, Snuffy's Revenge, Stand Up and Be Proud are all better songs. And then Swept Away is dedicated to the one and only Jimi Hendrix. I mean, it just sounds like a Jimi Hendrix tribute. Really good, though. The guitar player is a shredder. And apparently his last name is Romanola, Joe Romanola. He's got a label in Rochester, New York. So he's still in New York and has for 20 or 30 years. And he's produced a couple hundred albums. The biggest name album on there is one of the Chris Poland albums. He produced it and did some playing on there as well. So it's good, not great. If you find it for a couple bucks, it's worth checking out. Again, just New York street metal. And then this next one, so this is kind of, John Bit Bob Boom has talked about this quite a bit. New Wave of British Heavy Metal is kind of a weird thing. There's some great stuff. But a lot of the best New Wave of British Heavy Metal is the singles. And a lot of the bands that put out the best singles, when they put out an album, the rest of the album would be mediocre. There's so many fantastic New Wave of British Heavy Metal bands that put out just top 10 singles that their album just sucked other than those songs from the singles. That's kind of what this band is. I mean, this isn't a big known band, a known band anyway. I talked to a couple people, nobody had ever heard of it. But the band is called Dizzy Heights. I have a feeling that with some rich kids, because they put out like 4 albums and they were all self-done. And one of the members is listed as a producer, so I have a feeling his parents paid for it for all of their albums. But it's a really confused band. It's called, the name of the band is Dizzy Heights, and the album is High and Alive. And when I saw this, I thought New Wave of British Heavy Metal right away. I mean, everything about it just looks like New Wave of British Heavy Metal. And I mean, the write-up on here is so ridiculous and makes no sense. But it's really schizophrenic, though. The starting or the opening track used to be is a fantastic New Wave of British Heavy Metal song. It's killer. I could play that song over and over again. And then the whole rest of that side, with the exception of maybe one song, which dips into new wave of British heavy metal again, is like really confused 70s rock. It's not even 70s hard rock. It's just like 70s rock. And then there's a few more weak tracks on the B side, and then Good Times, a final track on here, is also really good. And I'm just noticing, who is Steve Tully? So the three songs that I just mentioned that I really liked, Used to Be, Escape, and Good Times, were all written by the singer. All of the rest of the songs were written by the keyboard and the backup singer, and they all suck. So I didn't even notice that till now. But so if you see this, there's some really killer new wave of British heavy metal on here. But then there's like 7 completely stinker tracks. So I mean, I paid $10 for this. Worth picking up for $10 for those couple of songs. And then last but not least, they also had a near mint copy of Dangerous Toys. I didn't have this on vinyl. They had it priced a little bit. Actually, it was a good price for the going market. But I got a good deal out of her, so went ahead and grabbed that. Just a super clean. It was actually still in the shrink, but the shrink was starting to look pretty ragged, so I went ahead and pulled it off. But just a fantastic album. And then the news just hit that Jason McMaster is back with Watchtower, and they're about to release a new album. So really looking forward to that as well. Let's see, 6 down. We'll do it. We'll finish it up. I got a few more here. Let's see, next up. So it's funny, I've always wanted this on vinyl. I finally broke down and bought the reissue, and then like a week later found an original pressing for less than what I paid for the reissue. Excuse me. But this is Faith, Hope, and Love by King's X. Just a fantastic album. Probably considered to be their best. It's probably my second favorite, but a lot of people consider this to be their best album. This one is a European pressing, German pressing. Sounds fantastic, but again, I paid like $30 for the reissue, and then found this one for like $25 a week later. Super stoked to finally have that one on vinyl. Next up, this one was a bit of a disappointment for a couple reasons. It's a good album. It's not great. It won't be in my top 10. I actually like their earlier albums. So I pre-ordered this. It was advertised as being signed by the whole band, and then I got it, and it was only advertised or only signed by the singer. I only paid like $5 extra for the signed version, so it's not that big a deal. The big disappointment was I didn't know Scott Gorham had left the band, and without Scott Gorham on here, it does change. It's not as good as the previous Black Star Riders albums. I'm not sure if he's retiring. I mean, he's getting up there in years, or if he's going to concentrate on touring with the Thin Lizzy name again. Who knows? But the new Black Star Riders, I still recommend it. If you like the first few Black Star Riders, you're going to like it. And it may just be that knowing that Gorham wasn't on there and thinking he was initially kind of ruined it for me. Next up, this was killer. This was not an album or a band I was familiar with. I saw this at one of my local stores, and it looked interesting. I looked it up and saw it was thrash, so I had to get it. This is Fear of God, Within the Veil. This was 91. Really killer thrash. I really dug this. I believe they have one other album I'll be looking for, and then they released an album under a different name before this one, but I really dug this. Highly recommend grabbing it. It's MOV. MOV is a tricky one though, because I go to some stores, and a lot of stores price MOV as audiophile records are like $39-40. And they're just trying to make money off of it, because I go to other stores and they're like $27-28 for the same record. And that's what happened with this. And I think I paid $26 for this. 100% worth it. Fantastic album. Next up, speaking of new wave of British heavy metal, a little bit of Warrior. This is Warrior Resurrected. So this is a different Warrior. This is not the US Warrior. And what's really funny in the new wave of British heavy metal side of things, there's like 5 different new wave of British heavy metal bands called Warrior. and 2 or 3 of them are from the same town. And this is one of those that's from that same town. It's really funny. I really dig this, though. I would say the stuff from the singles is my favorite, but there's some good stuff on the live, too. The live is really well recorded for New Wave of British Heavy Metal. Definitely a comp worth having, though. I really dug this one. And then last but not least, I think I talked about these guys in one of my singles videos. Maybe I didn't. But here's the single. The band is Year of the Cobra. And I really got into this band. I saw them at the... what was it? Is it Fire and Ice? Whatever. They had a local Doom show here, a Doom festival with, oh my God, Corrosion Conformity was there, Pentagram was there, Weed Eater was there. I mean, it was like 25 Doom bands spread out over the 3 rooms for the Masquerade here in Atlanta. This is one of the bands I caught that blew me away. Again, it's Year of the Cobra. It's a duo. It's the singer and her husband. The singer plays bass, and it's distorted, so it's just distorted bass and drums, and it's just killer. It sounds fantastic. She's got a great voice, and I really dug it. So I grabbed their LP. I grabbed a few of the singles and sent those out to friends. Really just fantastic. Highly recommend checking them out. I believe they're from Seattle. That's it, guys. I hope everybody's doing good. Stay safe, and if I don't get another video out before 4th of July, have a good and safe 4th of July. That's it, guys. Take care.